Hey guys, this is EckhartsLadder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars lore video. Today, we'll be looking at why Star Wars capital ships do not commonly use railguns. But before we dive into that topic, I just want to remind everyone that you guys have been choosing the videos that I cover. Almost every night, I've been posting YouTube community tab polls, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on if you want to help decide which videos get made. Also, if you do enjoy this video, make sure to not only leave a like, but also leave a comment with a question that you'd like me to cover next. Anyway, back on topic. There are a couple of things we need to get out of the way. I'm using the term railgun in today's video in a totally non-scientific sense. I'm talking about projectile weapons, not explosives, but any weapon system which inflicts damage, primarily through a launched projectile which unleashes kinetic energy, like say a UNSC MAC gun. Obviously, coil guns, railguns, and mass drivers are all different, but we'll ignore that for today's video. Another disclaimer is that some ships actually do use projectile weapons. The Yuuzhan Vong, for example, fired superheated plasma at high speeds. Even some ships within the Star Wars galaxy proper use projectiles, especially those of the Zhang Consortium. However, with perhaps the exception of flak cannons, which we do sometimes see, capital ship grade projectile weapons were very rarely used. Why did the galaxy come to prefer energy weapons to projectiles? Well, no source that I'm aware of has explicitly said. So today, we'll give some brief history and I'll make some best guesses. So the very first interstellar vessels used very rudimentary laser weapons, partially as self-defense, but primarily to clear out space debris. It's said that these designs were based off old Rakatan weaponry. Regardless, as more civilizations joined the galactic community, more warfare broke out. And one of the major limitations of energy weapons at this time was that they were not powerful enough to blast through planetary atmosphere and damage ground-based targets. 10,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Kamari changed the game by making use of mass driver cannons. Basically, they would take chunks of space debris and hurl it at a planetary target. This development would shape warfare of that era, and the Republic would respond with their own mass driver weapons. However, a few thousand years later saw the Waymancy Storm again switch galactic weapon doctrine. During that conflict, the Galactic Republic was besieged by the Waymancy Hollow, which had incredibly advanced fast-firing turbo lasers. Though the Republic, primarily through greater numbers, was able to win the war, it represented a paradigm shift back towards energy weapons, and after the conflict, the Republic reverse-engineered Waymancy weapons, giving their new turbo lasers more power, more efficient power generation, and especially faster firing speeds. Various conflicts after this point continued the militarization, and both weapon and shield technology saw significant improvements. So the switch to laser-based weapons and the tech developments which followed meant that turbo lasers saw the majority of development for several thousand years throughout the galaxy, while projectile weapons would have stagnated. This is especially true given the fact that military research at this time was being undertaken almost exclusively by the Republic, who again mounted lasers. It's hard to say why exactly railgun weaponry wasn't concurrently advanced, but we can make a few guesses. I mean, one argument is redundancy. If turbo lasers are delivering enough power, you don't also need railguns. But it's more than that. I think energy weapons were actually preferred. One of the reasons why was perhaps the prevalency of Tabana gas throughout the galaxy, and there were full refineries pumping gas not only for capital ship grade weapons, but also blasters and other technology, meaning perhaps that turbo lasers were just cheaper overall. Continuing this note though, also pushing forward general energy weapon development was the prominence of handheld blasters. Slug throwers had several disadvantages as an anti-personnel weapon. They had a more limited range, they were more heavily affected by gravity and projectile drop, and they were generally seen as cheap and inferior. Though blasters were obviously different than turbo lasers or laser cannons, all energy weapon development was shared among the different weapon types, at least presumably. So to sort of summarize this point, laser cannons started off space exploration, and although projectiles were used for at least some time. The almost 10,000 years before the Battle of Yavin were dominated by advancements in energy technology. Though technological breakthroughs did slow down, energy weapons were consistently scaled up with efficiency maintained. Speaking of size, another thing worth mentioning is power. Even if we ignore some of the crazier Star Wars Legends numbers, the expanded universe has shown us that Star Wars ships are capable of incredible feats of power generation, from single vessels largely slagging a planet, to jumping across a galaxy in days, to generating a planet-sized gravity shadow. You get the idea. It's possible that all this power is best used in an energy weapon, which ties into one of the oft-cited benefits of a railgun, their destructive potential. However, as I've said, we've not only seen turbo lasers slag planets, but also blow up asteroids, genocide planetary populations, boil oceans, catch entire planet-spanning forests on fire with only a couple of shots, etc., etc. What's more, the power is delivered in a relatively compact frame. Projectile weapons usually require some sort of spine to accelerate the projectile, and even ships in the Star Wars galaxy that do use railguns, like the Zon Consortium's Kaldabe, need significant space to fire the weapon, which only achieves relatively slow speeds. On the other hand, turbo lasers seem to draw from some sort of central energy source, and the guns can more or less be flexibly placed across the hull of the ship. Another point is shield power, and Star Wars ships seem quite capable of deflecting projectile damage. During The Empire Strikes Back, though we do see a Star Destroyer fall in the asteroid field, most of the fleet took dozens of asteroid hits without their shields faltering. According to the novelization, the asteroid bombardment was basically continuous, which is pretty impressive. In an old comic that everyone knows by now, we also see Vader's executor tank several Star Destroyers exiting hyperspace and crashing into the ship directly. Now, some incorrectly believe that Star Wars shields only stop energy, but that's blatantly untrue. Typically, ships would use both ray and particle shielding, with the latter stopping physical objects. I think it's possible that energy weapons, due to the way they dissipate heat and energy or something, make them better at overwhelming shields, but I'm not a physicist, so I don't really know. Finally, another frequently quoted benefit of railguns is their effectiveness at long ranges, as a projectile in a vacuum would lose very little of its destructive capability, even over very, very long distances. On the other hand, we know that turbo lasers do lose power and have some sort of theoretical max range. Unfortunately for the railgun proponents, range isn't super important in the Star Wars universe. Star Wars ships almost always use organic gunners, with droid-controlled weapons being poor substitutions. I've previously speculated that a ship's effective range is not limited by a turbo laser's power, but rather whether a ship can actually hit an enemy. And I think that's true. My point is, I don't think railguns will be any help, because the limiting factor here isn't the actual weapon itself, it's the sensor equipment, the skills of organic gunners, and just the general lo-fi nature of the Star Wars universe, which prevents longer range battles. So, to conclude, I think it's for these reasons: the history of weapons development, a general prevalence of energy weapons, turbo laser and shield powers, and the lack of computerization in the Star Wars universe, that railguns are no longer very prominent, and certainly less so than turbo lasers. But that's of course just my opinion, and I'm curious to hear what you guys think. So I'm going to skip on the question of the day today. Instead, I want to encourage you guys to check out yesterday's video, which is all about why the Forerunners chose not to save themselves or reseed their race during the firing of the Halo rings. I think it's an interesting video, however, unfortunately, because of a glitch on YouTube's end, the video didn't launch with a custom thumbnail and instead just had some crappy pre-generated thing, so I think a lot of people didn't click it, and thus YouTube didn't recommend it very much. I want to encourage you guys to check it out because I think it's a very enjoyable video. I'll put a link in the upper right hand corner and also down in the description. If you guys do have a question you'd like me to address, make sure to leave it down below with the hashtag AskEck. Again, if you guys enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and turn that notification bell on. Until next time guys, this has been EckhartsLadder. May the Force be with you.